Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash. Double honors to the elders and bishops at Great Millstone who teach and rule well. Salutations to the prophets and beloved brothers. Continue to exhort the sheep. The title of this epistle is going to be entitled, Peace, Be Still. Will you have the faith built up in those turbulent times to be still? First chapter we're going to go into is found in the book of Mark, St. Mark, chapter 4, starting at verse 37. And it reads, "And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship, so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awake him and say unto him, Master, carest thou not that we perish?" In this particular instance here, as we read in the beginning of the chapter, our Messiah, Yahweh Shai, he was taking a nap in a ship in the midst of a oncoming storm building up. And the disciples are now startled, and they want to wake up the good master, right? Continuing on, verse 39. "And he arose and rebuked the wind and said unto the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm." We see here how our Messiah was filled with so much power to tell that storm to cease from all activity, and stood strong in his ability to believe and with faith that he was able to accomplish this, and spoke to the storm, right? And verse 40 says, "And he said unto them," speaking to the disciples, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that ye have no faith?" And they feared exceedingly, and said one to another, "What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" A stable mind in the midst of chaos is going to command the storms. It's not going to be startled and prompted to act out of the flesh or move to fear, but with a sound and steady mind be able to command those moments within himself, which will ultimately create peace within the environment and those around him. When chaotic things begin to happen in people's lives, they usually crumble because of the soft life they have been living in and haven't known how to face turbulent times. So as we continue to build our faith and our strength and remain strong in what we believe in, knowing that we are being guided by Yahweh, Yahweh Shai, that in those darkest hours, in those moments of desperation, we will need to draw from the well that resides in us, those resilient things that we have understood, and bring them into practice, knowing that he will bring us through the storms. We want to have that resilience as Yahweh Shai did, and it begins with having the faith to believe that in those times of desperations that the Most High himself will move on our behalf, because our word stands strong and everything in it is true, and even the promises of him carrying his hopeful elect and those that lean on him and only him in those times, right? Let's go to the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 6, reading from verse 16 to 23. And it reads, this is when Daniel was tossed into the lion's den. This chapter here, Daniel 6 verses 16 to 23. And it says, Then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, Thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver you. This is the king speaking expressly to Daniel, almost in a taunting way, saying, your king is going to deliver you, right? So we'll see what happens. We're going to put you in a den. And verse 17, and a stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet, and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. So there was a group of guys that helped change some policies and laws that ultimately got Daniel tossed into the lion's den, because Daniel was faithful and prayed continually to Abanawa Yahweh, continually having much faith to believe that the God that we serve, the Hebrew God, Abanawa Yahweh, is the ultimate power who is able to deliver his people out of all circumstances. If you read over in Daniel chapter 6 and verse 10, verse 10, it says, now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open to his chamber towards Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his power. And he did aforetime. So he knew that in the midst of things being thwarted against him, that he continued to pray without ceasing, and facing the east to our power. So that way, we're told to seek him while he may be found, right? We don't want to be those type of people that are sitting in the midst of a turbulent time now praying to a power that we didn't build up a relationship with. So right here is an instance where Daniel, he had a relationship, and he understood what it was that was the will of the Most High Yahweh, because, well, spiritually speaking, allowing the windows to be opened up, it opened up his mind so that way he can receive the words to stand strong in the midst of being now cast into the den full of lions. Verse 18 of Daniel chapter 6, it says, then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. Neither were instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. So he didn't have no ease about what he did. He didn't have no calm, and he knew that by casting Daniel into the den of lions, something wasn't right, right? So verse 19, then the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste unto the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living power, is thy power, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? We know that's right. Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. My power Yahweh have sent his angel, and have shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me. For as much as before him innocency was found in me, blameless, spotless, he was found in good standing, right? He was found in good standing. And also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. Then the king was exceedingly glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no manner of hurt was found upon him, because he believed in his power, Abanawa Yahweh. In turbulent and desperate times, you're going to have a decision whether or not you want to stand firm in your faith and believe, having all the evidence around you which was written aforetime to say that was going to happen, and to stand strong so you can be found innocent, blameless, to receive protection, right? And you have to build up that resilience, and that resilience needs to be established within the faith and the walk. And it's the true doctrine that's going to deliver you, the true doctrine, because it's going to create, in a matter of colorful words, a force field around you, right? So as we continue to learn and build up our faith, being taught by the priests and the shepherds set over you, is going to create that resilience. Which brings me over to the latter portion of this epistle here, which is very informational, and it may be anecdotal for anyone who hasn't come to this understanding as of yet, especially as wars begin to rise and creates a prophetic domino effect of the things said to happen, right? So learning to lead before crisis. So as the men of the Most High Yahweh continue to walk in faith and build up our understanding, we're being led to learn these concepts before crisis, so we're not moved, we're stable, we have the mind of Hamashiach, and we have the evidence substantiated in testimonies to keep us filled with that faith, knowing that the Most High Yahweh through previous seasons has done remarkable things and opened up doors for us and shut doors for us and caused situation to happen that favored us. So we have that those moments to build up our faith, and we thank him for it. Learning to lead before a crisis, because you cannot learn how to be resilient and stable-minded within the midst of a crisis, right? It's not in those moments of your most darkest hours and trials are you now going to learn how to build up the resilience to come face to face with what's happening and not go into a state of denial, right? Most people deflect and they can absorb the pressures around them and ultimately buckle and fold. And what will happen if there's people that are relying on you in those moments to look for someone who is built for this and need that guidance to be resilient, a moment that people need someone to lean on because they have very weak faith. He says, to be mindful of those that are weak in the faith. We are to be a pillar and strength built of wisdom. It's not saying that we have to be numb to the situation, but we understand that all things are controlled by his hands ultimately. And we thank the Most High Yahweh that it's in his hands and not in man's hands, because man is truly flawed entirely. So I'm going to bring some information out. We've heard the quote, some of us: hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. It's a cyclical thing, according to the circumstances that you find yourself in life. Those very hard moments can either cause you to be really your skin to be really thick, or you can be just someone who hasn't built up the wisdom to fortify your mental stability to absorb those moments, to be an example unto others when things happen, right? So we'll continue on. You don't learn calm in chaos. You practice it in quiet seasons. So we are being taught in these seasons, considered quiet seasons, how to build resilience, having the opportunity to dive in, opening up the understanding for us to absorb it, to build ourselves up as we see the days approaching and all these prophecies come into life. The blessings are just around the corner as well. So that's a boost of faith and hope, saying, I pray that the hopeful elect and whoever they are able to endure to the end and all these things, so that way we can be those pillars and scribes and um, all those fascinating things that Abanawa Yahweh has said that um, he's willing to give to those who endure to the end, to stand on faith, right? Um, Number one, command your physiology. The first battle isn't external, it's internal. In crisis, your body reacts before your mind. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing shortens, your adrenaline spikes, your muscles tense, vision narrows, your body is preparing for a threat. So, when things on the outside begin to happen, no matter what it is, your spouse leaves you, you lose a job, you don't know where your wallet is, someone stole your car, so on and so forth. World War III. All these things are happening outside. How you perceive them and take them in ultimately will cause you to react in a specific manner. You're either going to forego your faith and be overwhelmed with fear, which ultimately brings about mental fog. You cannot make accurate decisions. You're scrambling, just like if anyone has ever been in a physical altercation. When adrenaline shoots up, you can't think straight. Some refer to being blacked out. I blacked out. Anger and everything just, swept over the person, and they weren't able to make a sound decision, which ultimately, and in most cases, causes, a demise. Because you're reactionary and you're not absorbing. So the first battle is what's going on outside. It's not internal, right? So you pause. You have to take a pause and say, okay, let me collect myself. Thank you, Abanawa Yahweh, for however you go into those moments to collect yourself, right? But we lean on him to give us guidance and strength and the wisdom to know how to maneuver. Continuing on, this is not weakness. When you experience these things, this is not saying, "Oh, I'm weak." This is not that. Let me continue on. Let me find my place here. This is not weakness. This is by design. This is your body's natural response to outside threat. When the body experiences these symptoms, believed to be under attack, mental fog ensues. When the heart rate spikes, reasoning ability shrinks, motor skills degrade, your judgment becomes reactive. In these conditions, one is unable to lead. So, this is for whomever, man or woman. I don't know what your personal situation looks like, but both can be applicable to the man of the house, to the woman in the house. If you don't have a head, help me as of yet, and if you don't, seek one while he may be found, because in the times that we are heading into, you're probably not just going to want to lean on just any man, but a man with understanding, a man who's going to have built up himself in sound doctrine, having full faith, knowing that I'm going to be able to lead whomever comes under my umbrella through those storms, because everyone is too occupied in football, drinking, sleeping with another, getting high, going to clubs, doing all these other things, as to where a devoted man who serves Abanawa Yahweh has devoted his time, his life, his body made a living sacrifice to come and bring forth education and wisdom unto you, so you can receive it and be built up for the times to come. So one is unable to lead if you're full of mental fog. You won't be able to have a quick response and repairing the situation if you can, or to just forego the circumstance and not putting those burdens on anymore, right? You don't want to take on more than what you can handle, right? But you want to be able to solve critical issues on the fly. And you can't do that when you're overwhelmed and you haven't fortified yourself in the sound doctrine of Abanawa Yahweh, Wa Yahweh Shai. Skill set: breathing, slow inhale through the nose for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, slowly exhale and hold for 4 seconds out of the mouth. Deliberate and controlled breathing relaxes the nervous system. So Yahweh Shai, when he stood up in the boat and he commanded that storm and he rebuked it, this is an example of coming face to face with your trial or tribulation or your circumstances. Not reactionary, but responsive in an appropriate way. And what he did, he leaned into the doctrine. He rebuked it. He said, no, I'm going to control this situation the best I can. And he says, our purpose is to be still and be peaceful. We're not going to grab up a sword and attack what we're experiencing. No. Be still. The disciples were all blown away because they were lacking. They were lacking in faith. Oh, what is this man? This resilient man who has built up and fortified himself in sound doctrine with true belief. He says, you don't have no belief. You have no faith. Because now you're going to rely on your carnal instincts and your own understandings to make those decisions in the times of desperation, which ultimately is going to cause your demise. Moving on, right? We're still talking about controlling our breathing. It's important for some to collect yourselves in this manner, right? It's not like, oh, we worked this out in our heads. We have been practicing over months. Yes, we're going to run to our bedrooms and grab our backpacks and we're going to dart out the door and don't forget the dog. No. Nice, calm, steady. You're going to relax yourself. And it starts with mental clarity, breathing. So when you breathe, you're allowing your heart rate to now pacify and slow down, which opens and relaxes the nervous system to have a better response to what's going on. If there's children around you and they experience something they have never experienced before that startles them and terrifies them, and they're going to be screaming, and I don't know what you call that sound, but it's like a high pitch and it bugs your ears out. Children have that vocal cord, but in those instances, this is when you are called to be that strength and a pillar of calmness and be a resilient person to calm that storm, right? Your reactions are not out of fear, but out of a sound mind, right? And you're walking with faith, knowing that you are able to do all things in decently and in order, because you gotta be built up with this understanding to know how to know how to react, so that way you're not stumbling and people around you, causing confusion and stuff like that. No. So start with your breathing. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Do that as often as you need to stay calm. So what that does is it regulates the heart rate, allowing mental clarity to rebound, right? Having this practice allows others to relax around you, gravitating towards a controlled and authoritative individual. Erratic behaviors bring panic and instability. You become that emotional anchor. Calming is contagious. This is what you want to exemplify through your atmosphere and your space. This person is of a sound mind and doesn't make erratic movements and doesn't just blurt out things and has a controlled speech, very in control, because some can manage times with, some can manage pressure a lot more than others. That's all I'm trying to say. Number 2, mental framing. I love this one. Mental framing. Every crisis has 2 parts. It has 2 parts, right? Like we were just talking about. You can perceive it 2 different ways. Mental framing. Every crisis has 2 parts. How you interpret the crisis determines the outcome within. The internal narration of one who panics begins to break down, assuming all is lost, clouding mental judgment, turning what could be a small setback to amplifying the issue, spiraling chaotically. So, if you find yourself in the midst of a crowd or in a room with a large amount of people and so forth, um, you're going to see the responses in the midst of chaos. Or you could be sitting at home alone, minding your own business, and something breaks out. Either way, you will see the difference in yourself and how you react to that stuff, or you'll see how others react. And in these two stages, someone can be reactionary, or someone can have that mental clarity to say, okay, boom, something just happened. So how are we going to respond to this? You know, I've seen car accidents where cars fly down a road, flip up in the air, and go crashing into something. You know, you'll see some people stop their car, jump out of their car with their kids in the car, forgetting to put the car in park, to be a savior to the situation. That's mental fog and clarity. You know, that's not decently in an order. You're adding to the chaos. And then there's some that, you know, pull over, park the car, call 911, have your seatbelts on. You got your family out the way. Boom. I'm going to go check both ways. You know, this is a person that has mental clarity of the situation, is high alert, you know, very highly alert. And through the scriptures and getting understanding is going to cause the ruach within you to be highly alert and watchful for these events that are said to happen and come to pass. And you're not going to fall and buckle in those moments of desperation, but you're going to be still. You're going to be still and relax and stay calm. No matter what the circumstances are called for, you're going to remain strong, right? Mental framing. A second approach, which would provide a better resolution to unforeseen crisis, is to take smaller pieces of the issue and solve, right? So, say your water heater breaks. Something happens downstairs in the basement. Now water's flooding all over the place, right? You can be reactionary and start screaming, get the mop, get the towels, get the rags, get the buckets, the blah, 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 blah. Now everybody's scrambling, slipping all over the floor, and you're forgetting to shut off the water. You're forgetting to hit the breakers so there's no electrical issues, you know. You have to respond to these moments in bite-sized pieces and control what you can around you. Don't worry about cleaning up the floor and the water. Attack each situation appropriately. You know, having that sound mind, built up with faith to believe that you're going to be moving in a way that is going to perform and success, right? So a second approach, which would provide a better resolution to unforeseen crisis, is to take smaller pieces of that issue and solve them. What you can in that moment, sorry. This would allow the mental space to readiness, to readdress, sorry, let me start that all over. A second approach, which would provide a better resolution to unforeseen crises, is to take smaller pieces of the issue and solve what you can in the moment. This will allow the mental space to readdress unresolved critical decisions with proper mental clarity. So now that you have shut the breaker off and you have turned the water off from that busted situation downstairs, this is just an example. Now you can say, okay, now we have to clean up the water and readdress what we can do about this. Is this something that was accidental? Someone left the water on downstairs? Or is this an issue of now that needs to be addressed and repaired? So these things you can maneuver with clarity and not be moved to, because in the midst of chaos, all things can, people argue and fight in the middle of some chaos. That's stupid. I told you don't let the dog out, and you let the dog out. Whatever's going on, right? Do not focus. Do not focus on the could be issues of tomorrow. Define problems that can be solved. Vague disasters cannot. Let me read that over. Do not focus on the could be issues of tomorrow. Defined problems can be solved. Vague disasters cannot. In the midst of turbulent times and issues, people often put their mind in the future ahead of the problem, saying, but what if our garden doesn't grow because we didn't place the garden bed in the appropriate area? It's not due south, but now we have to face it this way. And in those moments of trying to develop clarity in whatever decision making you're doing at that time, focus on what you can do right now, incrementally stage it, so that way you have the success. You have the success to act appropriately and behave appropriately, having that sound mind, sound wisdom, and being resilient and standing on faith and hope and understanding that all promises are coming to pass. Everything was coming to pass, and you have to stand strong in those moments of your trials and tribulations. You could be very well being tested. Everyone who is going through this walk, being tested, your faith is being tested to check the metals, see how strong you are, right? One individual might see the crisis as a devastation beyond all repair. Another will address the same issue by assessing in parts. One creates fear, the other creates focus. A man who frames accurately becomes steady. The problem isn't minimized, but doesn't dramatize it either. So you're standing in the situation of whatever it is, and you're not putting it off and minimizing the situation, but now you're assessing the situation, but you're not over dramatizing it. Oh my goodness, my tire, it blew out, and how we're gonna get to this place? And this is a reactionary person. Number 3, emotional containment. Emotional containment. Make or break moments. When tension rises, some men leak. Like I just said, they spaz out. They're uncontrollable. These people are crabs in a barrel. They're going to bring down the house, right? And especially, you can see some individuals now, they can't handle pressure. They can't handle the little pressures of life with an economy still going, the access to food, water, and safety. When turbulent times come, watch out. Watch out. So they vent. They match the anxiety in the room. Speak from adrenaline instead of clarity. Emotional containment is leadership. It doesn't mean suppression. It's sequencing. You feel the surge, right? You feel anxiety coming on. You breathe, like what we talked about in step 1. Steady yourself. Collect yourself. Let these words wash you, and wash over your mind. Remember the promises, In Joshua, let's see if I can find it real quick. In Joshua chapter 1, verse 6 to 8, it says, be strong and of a good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for inheritance the land which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, that thou mayest observe to do according to all the law which Moshe my servant commanded thee. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest prosper whither thou is to go. So his word, Abba Yahweh, has declared from the very beginning that he doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of a sound mind, and to keep his commands and practice his laws and statutes and put on those good fruits. These are those moments building up to trials and tribulations that cause us to be resilient and stand firm with a sound mind. Verse 8, this book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Daniel had good success in the den. He was found innocent, blameless, spotless, righteous in the midst of his trials and tribulations. Yahushua stood up, commanded, and rebuked that storm because he had the faith and belief that he had the power to command that situation, which brought fame to himself ultimately. That wasn't the objective, but that's a natural response when you are walking in sound wisdom provided by Abanawa Yahweh, and unto you delivered by the prophets, shepherds, and teachers that he set over you. So commanding those moments. So a person that is not grounded in faith and a sound mind, they're going to be erratic, they're going to be chaotic, and they're going to be out of here. They're going to be out of here, Jack. Emotional containment is leadership. It doesn't mean suppression, it means sequencing. You feel the surge, you breathe, steady yourself, pause, then respond. Addressing issues erratically without forethought increases uncertainty and panic. Remain composed even in uncertainty. Sometimes you don't have all the answers right now. No, I don't know what we're going to do right now, but what are we going to do? Relax. Let everyone settle, and then let the answers come to you, right? So you might not have all the answers all the time, but how you respond is what's going to be remembered, right? You don't want to be an hour later saying, damn, I shouldn't have said that. Damn, I know that, this was happening, this and that, but I'll do better next time. Addressing issues erratically without forethought increases uncertainty and panic. Remain composed even in uncertainty. Integrity is key to leadership. Sometimes leadership is saying less, moving slower, and letting silence settle before speaking. Emotional containment creates psychological safety and allows solutions to emerge. A crisis will expose your baseline conditioning. Impulse reactions will inevitably lead to demise. Trials and tribulations before catastrophe are moments to help build you up for critical issues and paramount conditions. These experiences of irritation is either building winning steadiness or wiring chaos. So as in this current moment, we're going through our trials and tribulations, people mocking and scoffing us, calling us all manner of words. You're interpreting the scripture wrong. You're lying. You're a false prophet. You're this or you're that. It's building resilience within us because now we're absorbing the punches, but we're not reacting to it. Some people just get straight reactive, and that's in the flesh, and that's when Hasatan got you, and that's where you're gonna end. That's where you're gonna end. So non-reactionary, non-responsive, but we're gonna be very in control with a sound mind and not being a mirror image to what's happening outside. We're not going to match the environment. We're going to be separate and set apart from it, right? So these experiences of irritation is either building winning steadiness or wiring chaos. For instance, before a storm, like we just talked about, right? Before a storm, observe nature, right? So before a storm, trees don't panic or shout at the wind, nor argue about the rain. A storm comes in, the winds pick up, the trees, they bend, they're able to manage and mold with the situation around them. And sometimes we have to adapt to that situation then too. Your house burns down. There's no reason to spend months and years crying over the lost photo album and everything else that was tied to that fire. But now you look forward to a new future because maybe that old situation that you had was not the best for you and wasn't going to bring forth life. That relationship that you had with that man or that woman was not a good relationship, so it had to abrupt and end how it ended. You know, these situations, we have to brace for impact and move through them and not bring them as part of our identity, because that will stagger you and hinder you from growth, spiritual growth at that. So, the storms, trees don't panic or shout at the wind, nor argue about the rain. They endure. That is regulated strength, not rigid nor frantic, but flexible and grounded. A seasoned man or woman doesn't flail. They won't buckle, they won't fold. They have the resilience built up in them to stand in times of desperation, right? He adjusts or she adjusts, assesses, and conserves energy. He is he is only put into action when necessary and lets go of things that cannot be controlled. That is discipline. And as disciples, this is what we practice, to be disciplined. He observes, he speaks carefully, and moves deliberately. You become the center of gravity, the embodiment of stability. Steady is trained long before it is needed. Create a gap between the stimulus and response. So, in those moments of stimulus, things that are happening, and your response, you create that gap by taking a pause, a setback, and saying, does this require my attention? Do I need to be directly involved with what's going on? Because some people just want to be a busybody, always in the midst of something. He says, don't, you know, don't run with a multitude to shed blood. You know, don't be mixed up with just every chaotic thing. Sometimes you have to pause and collect yourself to say, okay, this does not require my attention. There's plenty of people to address it right now. I'm good. If you have specialized information that could help the situation or something like that, then maybe that's something you can contribute or offer to it. But don't be an extra hand in the bowl just because, right? So, and praise through the storms. Praise through the storms. That is a very paramount practice that we need to establish. You know, in the midst of whatever's going on in our life, sometimes we can allow that situation to sweep us off our feet and cause us to be responsive to life. But through the scriptures, you know, we lean into our power, Yahweh, because he's able to do all things for us and those that believe and keep his ways, and we praise through the storm, you know. Call hello Yahweh, call hello Yahweh Shai, you know. And we praise him. We praise him because it's a command. It's a command to praise Abanaw Yahweh, you know. Call hello Yahweh. Call hello Yahweh. Yahweh Bahashem Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Bahashem Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. Call hello Yahweh. You know, when you have belief and you have faith to know that he stands above you, behind you, and all around you, you are consumed by his love. Having that faith that is just truly undeniable. And I pray that each and every one of you can be that pillar in your home, in your circumstances, whatever you're being drawn through and out of, and to continuously put on righteousness and understanding, to be that pillar that everyone is probably going to come to be drawn to, because we are also called to be a light unto others. So I pray this was helpful. Until the next time, Shalom.